Hello, and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to listen to this. I hope that there is something within this video that is a benefit to you or someone that you know. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. Thumbs up, and leave a comment. Today I wanted to talk about something that is a topic of contention. I wanted to state again, it is not the American government that is systemically racist. It is the people in the government that makes the laws. You cannot go anywhere today without politics being in our faces, whether it's gender pronouns or how people that are unvaccinated are unclean. It brings to mind the Spanish Inquisition of what is going on in America today. I remember the 80s. It was a time where people saying rock music is a corruption of our youth. This segregation thing that we have going on, Black History Month, Women's History Month, Asian Pacific, Islanders Month, Pride Month. Where's the month for God? Oh, I guess that would be December. Yeah. Okay. This is segregation. That's all of it. What happened to the American melting pot? By the way, where's the box that you need to check for biracial? I feel one of the most segregating terms since the 80s and 90s up to right now is the designation African American. Why not just American? Oh, that's a whole nother video in itself. There's a lot of hate in the world right now. There's a lot of darkness, a lot of lack of tolerance. What I wanted to read to you is something that has been bothering me since the whole federal mandate for companies of less than 100 employees was put out by Biden. Hello, YouTube. I'd posted this article up on Minds, Minds Pro. I recommend you take a look at Minds. There's a lot more free speech in it, allowed for it as well. I digress. This is not about freedom to run through a red light. It's about human rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For those who are unable to recognize it, it's the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. Now, I want to read you something else. Presumable medical experiments. Trials of war criminals before the Nuremburg Military Tribunal under Control Council Law No. 10, Nuremberg, October 1946 to 1949. Washington, U.S. Government Printing Office, ND, Volume 2, pages 182 and 181 and 182. These are some very interesting things. 1949, World Council, World Agreement on What is Human Rights. The voluntary consent of human subjects is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice, without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress. Oh, can't work unless you get the jab. Overreaching or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the element of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. The later element requires that before the acceptance of an affirmative decision by the experimental subject, there should be made known to him the nature, duration, and purpose of the experiment. So far, they keep saying more boosters as well. The methods and means by which it is to be conducted, all inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected, and the effects upon his health or person which may possibly come from his participation in the experiment. The duty and responsibility of asserting the quality of consent rests upon each individual who initiates, directs, or engages in the experiment. It is a personal duty and responsibility which may not be delegated to another with impunity. Number 2, the experiment should be such as to yield fruitful results for the goods of society, unprocurable by other methods or means of study, and not random and unnecessary in nature. I believe Denver University just mandated the flu vaccine as well. This is from Nuremburg. I'll get into this in a second. Number 3, experiments should be so designated and based on the results of animal experimentation and a knowledge of the natural history of the disease or other problem under study that the anticipated results will justify the performance of the experiment. 4, the experiment should be conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. With all the people saying you must take the jab or else, with the government saying you can't, you are basically a second-class citizen if you don't take this experimental medication, there's some conflict here. Some serious conflict. 5, no experiment should be conducted where there is a prior reason to believe that the death or disabling injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physician also serves as the subject. In other words, doctors, experiment on yourself first. So says Nuremberg when it comes to experimental medication. It's funny, I remember Veritas saying that most of these scientists at Pfizer haven't taken the vaccine. Number 6, the degree of risk to be taken should never exceed that determined by the humanitarian importance of the problem to be solved by the experiment. Ooh, that's just, we can argue that all day. Any court will. Proper preparation should be made and adequate facilities provided to protect the experimental subject against even remote possibility of injury, disability, or death. The experiment should be conducted only by scientifically qualified persons. The highest degree of skill and care should be required through all stages of the experiment of those who conduct or engage in the experiment. Yeah, that's not going on because they're not recording any side effects. As a matter of fact, during the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment to an end if he has reached the physical or mental state where continuation of the experiment seems to him, the human subject, to be impossible. That means, people, that if you get one jab but you don't get two, you have the right to say no. It is a human right that as Americans, we should be holding as self-evident. During the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage. It's number 10. Let me read that again, in case you missed it. During the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage. I don't think Fauci is anywhere near ready to terminate this for any reason. If he has probable cause to believe in the exercise of the good faith, superior skill, and careful judgment required by him, that the continuation of the experiment is likely to result in injury, disability, or death of the experimental subject. Now, I read these to you because they're very important. They were set forth by a World Council as to what is human rights, to set a standard of when governments go too far and need to be stopped and put into check. I ask the American government to check itself. as you were in violation of the Nuremberg trials and the ideas and concepts of what is human rights that were set forth. These have been set forth as grounds and precedents for the prosecution of the German National Socialist Party. Because prior to these mandates, there had been allowed for some very dark and horrible things to be done against people in the name of science that had been declared unclean by the government. Well, some will point out how we are not currently at war. I would say to you, we are. They call Afghanistan a war. It can be said that the government is at war with the populace. Yellen says that they're attacking the middle class. Look at January 6th event. But the vice president raised funds to release Antifa the next day. There has been no formal declaration, but those without honor usually attack without warning and first. How many stand behind the idea that the unvaxxed are unclean, should be segregated and separated? Again, it shows why the majority of people became Nazis in Germany. It's a dark and scary part of their history, and that is why they don't talk about it, because the common people do not want to admit how easy it was for them to fall into the groupthink of the Nazi Party. Anyways, I digress. I still have family in Germany on both sides of my family, so yeah. So when you look at that, it is why you can say how the Tuskegee experiments had been so morally wrong. So to cite the smallpox mandate that was in, 1905, I believe. Again, I kind of trumpy here with the 1940 moral code mandate of experimenting on humans. In the 1920s, eugenics had been widely supported in the scientific and medical communities. In the case of Buck v. Bell in 1927, the state of Virginia passed a law that allowed for the forced sterilization of what the state had deemed feeble-minded individuals. By 1930, 24 states had passed involuntary sterilization laws. Around 64,000 women had been ultimately sterilized by these statutes. All in the name of public health, by the way. Oh, too dark of American history? Well, with all that, I want to say thank you very much for for joining me. I hope that there's been something in here that you found of value to you or to somebody that you know. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave a comment down below. And I'd like to hear from you what you might think of this particular topic. Thank you very much. And I hope that you have yourself a very beautiful day.